Can you talk me through exactly what happened on October the 7th?
You don't understand what these monsters did. Do you know how war is fought?
Tell me.
Thousands of rockets fired into Israel from Gaza, raped, tortured, mutilated, shot up, missing limbs. The last thing that they ever saw before they were killed was their own child being burnt alive in their oven. The smell of the death, of rotting flesh, that gets embedded in you. Children's backpacks, bodies that were booby-trapped.
They're born and taught and indoctrinated to hate the West from school.
It was in the school curriculum. I saw it.
Did the UK need to be scared?
They're going to come for you. They're going to come for the rest of the world. You're not going to be able to withstand what's coming. I've never seen any culture thrive with an external Islamic influence within it. We have different ideals and worldviews, and I respect that, but not in my land, not in my country. You want Sharia and you want to whop off heads and hands for stealing? Do that in Islamic lands.
So October the 7th could have been even worse. I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health. Doron.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for flying in. I appreciate it. And yeah, this next hour, hour and a half is going to be very interesting, to say the least. Before I get into October the 7th, what actually happened and the response, whether it was disproportionate or not, and we cover a whole range of topics, could you introduce yourself with your credentials and your background?
A little bit about myself for your audience. You can tell with the American accent, I'm obviously not from here. My family is originally from the United States. My father was a World War II vet and also Christian Zionist that moved to Israel in the 70s. And so my brothers and I were raised in Israel as an effect of that. And then essentially I got into, as later on in years, I got into security. So I've been working executive protection for many years. Been in the IDF as a combat soldier, starting as like your Royal Marines equivalent is the unit where I started, essentially. That was my base. And then years later in the reserves, I transitioned into a Special Forces unit, which is a special mobility unit, similar to the SAS long-range mobility units back in World War II, for those who know a little bit of British Special Forces history. So we kind of take all of our learning from that, and then, of course, we apply it to our needs. And also a filmmaker. We've produced a film this year in 2025 called I Am Israel, the Mountain of the King. So able to do that in the middle of a war. And in general, just a family man, fear God, patriot, love my country, love Israel. And my goal is to be able to help the West combat, through my podcast, which I also have and started during the war, actually, is to help the West kind of combat a lot of these misinformations about the war, about Israel, and also the threats are coming against the West, which is essentially the Green-Red Alliance, which is Islamic, Marxist, and communist agendas kind of combined, trying to attack Western Christian foundations or Judeo-Christian foundations. So that's kind of to sum up a little bit of what I've been doing.
Which is perfect. And this is why I'm so keen on this conversation and picking your brain, because there's real mixed emotions as to the conflict over there. Some people deem the IDF as the new neo-Nazis. I will get backlash just for platforming you. For the record, I don't care. I'm here to find out facts and truth from lived experience. Now, we've got a lot of political commentators in the UK that have never been to Israel, never been to Gaza. They think they're walking authorities on it because they've read an article somewhere, or they know someone who knows someone who knows someone who spent a weekend there. This, for me, is as real and raw as it's going to get. And if we can take it back to October the 7th, I've heard so many conflicting stories, but from no one that was there.
Right.
Can you talk me through exactly what happened on October the 7th?
So the short version really is that on October 7th, we were in a high holiday in the state of Israel, just like Yom Kippur. So similar Yom Kippur, which was a high holiday back when we came under attack back then. Similarly, today, we came under attack on one of our high holidays, Shmini Atzeret, or Simchat Torah, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is actually when Israel has a very high number of Christians that come from around the world for this particular feast, because there's a connection for the Christian world about end times, etc. I won't get into that, but essentially many Christians come to Israel for the Feast of Tabernacles. So you had lots of my friends, Christian friends from all over the world in Israel when this happened as well. So they got to also witness this firsthand. And essentially, while we were on this high holiday, we came under this miserable attack, horrific attack. We had thousands of rockets fired into Israel from Gaza, terrorists on paragliders coming in over the border and made their way into Jewish communities. They breached the fence by the tens of thousands of Gazans that breached the fence, the security fence. They attacked installations, cameras, headquarters, if you like, for the brains for communication, visual cameras, etc. They hit all of those things in a simultaneous attack, which essentially created a very slow reaction for the IDF and all the other police and law enforcement, everyone, to try to figure out what the heck's going on. So you're basically fighting blind, if that makes sense, for the warfighters. You were not able to communicate and or see what's happening on the ground. And so it created a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. And unfortunately, within that reality that was created for us in an instant, we had over 6,000 terrorists that basically were roaming free in Israel proper, slaughtering, murdering, looting, you name it, targeting police stations. So, for example, in Sderot, this was one of the biggest gun battles that occurred during October 7th, where the terrorists went through the communities of Sderot. We're talking about like where I came here to the studio. You have homes, whatever, and then let's say your police station right nearby, the central police station comes under attack. So they both hit civilians on the street, doing drive-by shootings, whatever. But then they were basically heading to the ones who would be the first responders. So they targeted the police station, took over the police station, murdered all the police officers in the police station, and held it, and basically went into an all-out shootout with the Israeli response teams that came to the police station to try to save whoever was left in the police station, which in the end I think they saved about 3 by miracle, that 3 officers made it to the roof and got extracted. So just absolute chaos. And that went on for about 2 to 3 days at least, give or take.
And was there house raids included in that onslaught and attack?
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm kind of an observer of life, because I want to follow the patterns. I've seen what happened in Iran 1979. I can see the alliance. I can see the mirror behaviour here. So I am concerned, and I don't want to scaremonger people. And I've thought for a long time, we've got a migration problem in the UK. Thousands of unvetted fighting fit men. They're all strategically placed around the country. And I think one day, if and when they want to orchestrate an attack, I think if they want to really, really instill fear and terror into Great Britain, all at once, they'll attack people's homes, slaughter families in their own homes, and work their way down. Because it only takes 4 men per home to come in, attack, chop heads, or the churches. So when I heard about October the 7th and the invasion of Hamas, and I'll ask some questions down the line, as to how do you think they would justify it? How do you think they see it from their eyes? But I fear that one day there could be a very similar attack to October the 7th in the UK. So I really want people to pay attention to this, because of your history, you're going to give us some good advice as to how to prepare. I know from my due diligence that you've seen the cam footage from some of the Hamas terrorists, soldiers, whatever we want to call them, just to give people an idea, the severity and what they're prepared to do and the brutality. You saw some of this footage firsthand. Can you describe some of the scenes that you saw that will probably stick with you forever?
Yeah. Honestly, the worst I did not see, and I made a point of not viewing the footage because I wanted to have a level head going into Gaza with the operations. It was already hard enough for me to, with the knowledge and just, of course, because everybody's talking. All the time, everybody's talking. So you hear what was done and what was committed and so on. And of course, we witnessed, right? I was at the Nova Festival right after they slaughtered hundreds of people. I think it was like over 500 people at the Nova Festival. So I did see the physical carnage of the aftermath of what those terrorists did. Can you imagine hundreds of cars, all of them doors open or the trunk or whatever, looted and or booby-trapped, bodies that were mutilated, raped, tortured, shot up, cut, you name it, right? Missing limbs, etc. Bodies that were booby-trapped, all right? So that was part of our mission actually on the day after October 7th. So on October 8th, we were already there assisting the special Yalom unit that was clearing all the booby traps, including bodies, children's backpacks, little kids, cartoon of Mickey Mouse or whatever, or Hello Kitty, something that a father like me, and they know that, that has compassion, that cares about life, and that's what they know, that's our weakness, is that we care about life. We care about and have compassion for our enemy, which is why Israel is feeding our enemy as we're fighting Gaza right now, for example, right? No other military in the world has ever done that. Not England, not the United States, not Sweden, not Norway, not Switzerland. Give me a country that's gone to war with another country and has actually fed their enemies. That's what Israel does. Because Israel's weakness, if you like, is our compassion towards humanity, but also towards even our enemy. And they know that. And so they were planting these booby traps specifically like that. Also in Gaza, by the way, they recorded children that they had tortured and made them call out for help and so on. They put down a recording, they put on a loop, and then they would embed that with a booby trap explosive device so that when you would go to try to find that child that you're hearing, because they know we're coming to search for the hostages, that it would lead you into a booby trap that would then detonate and kill all these soldiers. And that's why we had some heavy casualties in the beginning of the war, which my unit was very active in evacuating a lot of these mass casualties to the PJs, the equivalent to the U.S. military's PJs, which is the 669 unit, and get them air evac'd out of Gaza, out of the heart of the combat. But the worst that I heard was from a very good friend of mine. So this is a firsthand account. This is not a he said, she said nonsense. This is a very good friend of mine who is a former Yamam operator. Yamam is Israel's Tier 1 unit, the equivalent to the SAS, the equivalent to Delta. Okay, so they're up there. They're one of the top Tier 1 units in the world. They also did the most miraculous hostage rescue in the history of hostage rescues, where they took out the 4 hostages in the heart of Gaza. And I know some of those men that took part in that mission, by the way. And then hearing them telling me this, not what the news heard, but hearing from them, things are classified and I can't share, but just hearing from them, their eyewitness account of how some of what they did is just beyond miraculous. Imagine over 1,000 armed combatants in the heart of Gaza, where they have 4 hostages held in 2 different locations, and they were able to rescue each and every one of those hostages simultaneously, get out with only 1 casualty to the Imam teams, one of the team leaders. To me, these people are heroes. And so one of my good friends out of that unit who retired got called up on October 7th because they also got all the guys that were already retired medically or whatever. In his case, he was medically retired because it's a long story, but he got wounded very badly. He came, he participated in defending and fighting and everything until I think the second day, and then they released all the non-enlisted guys, if you like to call it, or the ones who are active duty, which has never happened. They've never called up the whole of everyone ever for the unit. This is the first time in the history as well. And he witnessed out of one of the body cams and said, Doron, you don't understand what these monsters did. And he's telling me this in tears. He said they tied up a couple and they started to torture the couple as they're tied to each other. So they could feel the pain of the other person the whole time. So it was just brutal torture and merciless. Cut off the breast of the wife, gouged out the eye of the husband. And again, just torturing. And then the final cherry on the top, so to speak, of their torture sessions was taking the baby and then putting it in the couple's oven and cooking the baby to death in their oven before they off them. So that was the last thing that they ever saw before they were killed, was their own child being burnt alive in their oven. That's the level of brutality and mercilessness of these monsters that I've been dealing with, that the world has been having compassion for and trying to humanize somehow.
Yeah, that's shocked me to the core. Actually made me feel very sad because you painted that picture very graphically, and I'm grateful for it because this is what could be coming our way. That's evil to the core. Before we talk about the response of the IDF, which has been very controversial over here, especially with the likes of Piers Morgan, and I'll be interested in your perception of him and the way he's reported on the conflict. How many Israelis died during the October 7th attack?
So over 1,200 people were killed. Over 200 taken hostage. We had, I think it was about 700 soldiers were killed. And this is just on the initial October 7th battles for the first few days. And then collectively now, I don't know the exact numbers yet, what the most current numbers are as far as soldiers that have died in total since the beginning of the war. But that was just on the start of this war, just to kick it off, so to speak. So we took some very heavy casualties for the military, not to mention civilians. And it's also the first time in Israel's history that we had such a high casualty rate for all of our Tier 1 units as well that responded on that day. Because the specialty of special forces is that you train and you train again and you drill it and you drill it and drill it before you carry out the mission. Okay, so the attack on Osama bin Laden's hideout, for example, the SEAL team that carried out that mission, SEAL Team 6, famously, they did mock-ups for like a long time before they carried out the actual mission. And so that's, of course, what guarantees a higher level of success in any given mission, like the mission I just mentioned where our guys did the most heroic and most successful hostage rescue mission in the history of hostage rescue missions ever. Okay, over 1,000 combatants, over 250 of them were killed, right, at the end of the gun battle with 4 hostages back home out of the heart of the enemy. But that took planning. So imagine that you just rush to the gunfire, because that's how we're trained. We're trained to rush to where you see people running away from like a tsunami or whatever, or a guy with wielding a knife. The people like us, you'll be seeing us running against the crowd, looking for the threat and try to eliminate it if we can. And so in an instance like that, yeah, you can get killed, right? Because I didn't plan to take this guy out. I don't have a sniper or this or that or any clever tricks that I can, pull out of, my sleeve, so to speak, because we've planned it to the T, and you have contingencies and plan B and C, etc. So it was a very high level or high number of casualties also for the Special Forces community, which is a big, big hit for us.
So when you responded to this attack, initially broadcasters were saying you just can't expect there not to be a reaction to that. That with every action comes a reaction. So watch this space. And then quite quickly, broadcasters were saying that It's gone way beyond retaliation. This is now genocide. It's brutal. It's unforgivable. They're killing innocent children, civilians. Where does it stop? Netanyahu may as well be the devil reincarnated. Was the response to October the 7th justified and proportionate?
First of all, proportionality is a bunch of BS. That's a stupid term. Okay? What does that mean, proportionate? Should I rape their women? Should I behead their kids? Should I burn them in an oven? That's proportionality if you want to use that term. The people using this, they are obviously stupid, or they're obviously crooked and have an agenda, and they want to put propaganda out there and twist people's minds to think something that's not true. Do you know how war is fought?
Tell me.
The way war is fought is that you have an objective, and the objectives are eliminate the threat, ensure security and safety for your civilians, your borders, and until that's achieved, you keep fighting where the enemy is. Where's the enemy? In Gaza. Where have they embedded themselves? Under children's bedrooms, mosques, hospitals, schools, United Nations facilities. In fact, all of them, to my knowledge, have been used to aid and abet terrorists, the all-righteous United Nations. How come nobody's talking about that? In fact, the United Nations has the gall to say that Israel is starving the Gazans. You know what the reality is? Those bastards will not take the aid and get it to the Gazans.
So Hamas starving their own people?
Yes,
so
100%.
So Israelis are sending the food to Hamas and Hamas aren't distributing it?
Correct. So, you know, Black Hawk Down, I've used this analogy for anybody who's a movie buff or whatever. Black Hawk Down. The opening scene, Ridley Scott has these beautiful descriptions kind of building the film and the scene for the viewer to understand what's the context. So he talks about Adid, I think is his name, and he's the main terrorist there, and he's starving the people because he's taking the United Nations food. Isn't this ironic? A repeat of, you know, the incompetence of the United Nations, which isn't being brought up ever. Or when it is, nobody's reporting it. I've never heard Piers Morgan talk about the United Nations. I never heard Tucker Carlson talk about the incompetence of the United Nations. It's only a few people that have the balls to go out and try to expose them. Why is that? What is this, a mafia? They can just do what they want? They can go rape and commit crimes against humanity in Africa and all these countries where it's a known fact. The United Nations soldiers take advantage of their positions and do all of these things. But it's Israel who doesn't rape, who doesn't commit atrocities, because our military has a high ethical standard, and you will get your butt sent straight to jail if you commit any of these kind of war crimes. In fact, there was a report that said, because it's like they can't get us no matter what. So there was actually a report that went out that said the IDF is the most racist military in the world because where the IDF is operating, they don't rape the women. So we're racist. So which is it? We're rapists. We're racist. You know what I mean? It's like they can't stop with just pushing propaganda because there's a clear anti-Semitic agenda in the mainstream media, in the United Nations, in The Hague. And you say, oh, so the whole world's against you. Yeah. But the reality is what's happening, and this is what nobody's talking about, Hamas steals the food, uses the food as a weapon against its own people. Therefore, if you're not going to support the Hamas terrorist group, which is losing support by mass in Gaza, they will either beat you, kill you, or not feed you, and or sell you food, the free food that's come from the international community and Israel. Israel has sent more food than anybody else, to my knowledge, by the way, and humanitarian aid, you name it. They take it and they will sell it to you in inflation, depending on who you are, depending on how close you are to supporting us or not supporting us. And that's exactly what happened with that mission in Black Hawk Down, where they fought those terrorists, because that's what they were doing. But see, the Americans can do it, and they're heroes, and they make a film about it, and they're heroes. And they're depicted as such because they are, and they were. And I know some of those men. I interviewed 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿, one of the top generals of that operation, who gave me firsthand information of how miserable that was, right? So why are they heroes is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And why are we criminals
Let
when
me-
we're doing the exact same thing.
Let me go back to the starvation of children. So
Yeah.
you're saying that the emaciation of children isn't Israel's doing, it's Hamas's doing.
Yeah.
So a straightforward question is, if you thought that the IDF were responsible for the starvation of children, would you condemn your own?
100%. 100%. Listen, have there been soldiers that have committed war crimes? Yes. In every war that happens. And it sucks. It sucks because when one of us does it, it makes all of us look bad. It's that one bad apple that ruins the image for all of us, all the more so for the IDF. So have there been war crimes? I'm not going to tell you there haven't been. Have I witnessed war crimes? The answer is no. I haven't witnessed us committing war crimes. I have heard of soldiers who have committed war crimes, and their button is in jail. They don't have a career in the military ever again. We are harsh against anyone who breaks the rules. And because I think the other thing that's very important for people to understand, the IDF represents the country, the people. It's not like the military branch and everyone else. And so that's what I'm saying is when one of us screws up bad, it incriminates all of us, so to speak, right? It makes us all look bad, right? Because it's this community, like we are all guarding and protecting our country. We all have to do our military service. Not everybody has to be in combat, but everybody does their term in the military, most Israelis. And so it's a reflection of the collective whole of Israel, right? And so we detest that.
Well, I'd be very surprised if Hamas was to condemn their own. So can we talk about the hostages? How were they taken? Where were they taken? How were they treated? And how are they being treated? And how many have been rescued? And how many are still there that need rescuing?
So I told you about my friend in Norway, right? He's also a Special Forces reservist in one of their Tier 1 units, by the way. I went there shortly in one of my short breaks from the war because he invited me to come and speak to the parliament members. And so I went there and I witnessed in Norway that there were posters, Free Palestine, Palestinian flags everywhere, etc. In front of the Norway's top university, downtown Oslo, etc. On the train, propaganda nonstop. You know, send money to all these nonprofits that are going to help feed the Gazans, which, by the way, are all front groups for terrorist groups. People don't even know this. But in Europe, that's what they're doing. They have these front groups that make you look like you're going to go feed a Palestinian child or a displaced family. But really, it's terrorists getting more money on your compassion, on your ignorance to the reality on the ground. They don't need money. Okay, international aid is over 4,000 calories per person per day continuously throughout the war. Of course, that fluctuates, plus minus, because of who? Hamas. So if anybody's starving in Gaza, it's Hamas that creates that. But here's the thing. All of what you saw on BBC, CNN, the picture of an emaciated child, that was a poor child who has a horrible birth defect. His mother is fully healthy female of her age. His brother in the background, which they cut out conveniently from the, also was it the Time magazine also had on the front cover there.
I know exactly what you're talking about
Yeah.
as well. She was actually a very large woman. She looks like she doesn't struggle to eat.
Yeah, it went viral. But here's the thing. Notice the mainstream media is it's like a monopoly on the truth. And they know that they're doing it. And they know they can get away with it. And every time Israel fires back and says this was false reporting or this is this, or any NGOs or anybody that tries to take them down, what do? They send in a correction to that main news source that's been viewed by millions already, and they put it on, let's say your main account is, let's say, 10 million people. They'll put it on the PR account or whatever that has maybe 100,000 people. And they'll put the correction there, which nobody saw. Nobody give a crap about that, right? Nobody reshared that. And so you're being manipulated. You're being used. And the sad thing is that you play right into their hands and you think that it's like this righteousness thing, right? And that's why I told them in Norway, I said to the parliament members, I said, you guys are worse than Nazi Germany. Because all I see is everything about how the poor, starving kids and this and this and this and Free Palestine, not one poster for the hostages. Not one that I witnessed. I said, shame on you.
And what happened?
Shame on you.
What happened to the hostages?
They got taken. They got put into tunnels where you can barely breathe. Okay, so low oxygen. They were forced to drink basically their own, recycled their own urine. And when they want to be nice, they'll give them water, okay, and or salt water from the sea to screw with them and laugh and make fun of. I mean, this is testimonies I've heard from the hostages that came out.
And how many hostages were taken in total?
Over 250. Over 250. And so they've been held in the worst conditions. And so one of the latest, and this is not us putting this out, propaganda. This is Hamas putting this out. They're showcasing the inhumane conditions they're holding the hostages.
They're proud of their work.
They're proud of their work. And that's the biggest irony. Remember what I just said? Everybody has been talking about, the BBC, CNN, everybody, all the mainstream guys, about this poor kid in his mom's arms, yeah? But how many people shared the footage of Hamas and of the young man that was held in the worst conditions and that looks like a skeleton and was digging his own grave?
I saw that.
How much did the media talk about that?
Not a great deal. I had to go to X to see that, and I saw the before and after pictures of the guy that's clearly, I mean, he has been emaciated and clearly tortured psychologically because he looks gone. You can see when someone's lost their mind.
100%. And I speak Hebrew, so I can see it even more so. Yeah?
Right.
I can see, I can hear and pick up on more so.
On the nuances.
And you're 100%. And here's the thing. So Israelis, right, to fight back and say, what about this guy? Poor little Muhammad. But what about this guy? He's actively being starved and forced to dig his own grave. The IDF is not doing that to any Gazan. I'm telling you that right now. You want to hear a story? Here's a personal story. How the IDF treats the Gazans. We went into a special op mission, and we went into an area of Gaza, I can't give specifics, but into the heart of it, where the military is conducting special missions. And one of the homes was being used as a fob, if you like, inside Gaza, with a bunch of soldiers pulling security and carrying out missions from there. So we came in there, right? We were their guests, if you like. It's not our post. And so we came in to do our mission. And then I see a soldier guarding a room without anybody in it, right? And I'm like, what is he doing? Like, it's like all the soldiers are over here because I had just seen all the posts and everything, got a tour. I'm like, what is he guarding? And I look inside because I'm outside and it's all sunny, And so I look inside, and as my eyes adjust to the darker of the room, I see a family of 2 parents and 5 kids. I'm going, what the freak is this? It's a Gazan family that when the IDF came in and said, we're coming into this area, clear out, clear out, clear out, because we always clear out all the civilians before we come in and operate in another area, because we're trying to methodically clear out the whole of the Gaza Strip, which is insane. They chose not to clear. They disobeyed the orders. And when the IDF got there, they're like, who are you people? Why are you here? Did you not get the report? Go. And the father says, no, Hamas will kill me. I'd rather risk the IDF killing me than going to the humanitarian zone. Let that sink in for people. He rather chooses odds against a trigger-happy soldier, if you like, or some young kid who freaks out and comes into a room to clear this building, and all of a sudden there's somebody there. And it's like, whoa, right? He rathered that than go to the humanitarian area. And so what did the soldiers do? They had to add another guard post. For anybody who understands military and you're given missions, that sucks big time, because that extra guard post means extra men have to do more rotations of guard posts, less sleep for the soldiers.
Making you more vulnerable.
Making us more vulnerable. And they had to share their rations with these people.
Okay.
Because where else are they going to get food? And so the only thing, if you want to hear about a war crime, is that because they were young soldiers. These were enlisted men, not reservists, is they were bitter to me, and were telling me, they said, this sucks. I said, why? Because we have to share our rations with these people. We're already low on food. I said, yeah, man, I know. It sucks. I'm sorry. And we tried to be nice and like share whatever we brought in, because we come in and out, right? So we don't have that problem. But this was their problem, and they dealt with it. The decision could have been simple, of that general that's in charge of those missions in that area, and say, tell them to go. Not our problem. But we made it our problem. And we made it our issue to guard them and protect them while conducting missions there. And what if a terrorist bombed that place and that family got killed as they were targeting the soldiers? Well, how would the optics would have looked on that on the international media? Those were the risks that we were willing to take.
Yeah, I see that. That does make perfect sense. I'm going to come back to the hostages, but I'll tell you something that I've heard from a number of people, and this is first-hand accounts that have served, that Islamists will use their children as human shields. Yeah. Can you confirm or deny that's the truth?
100%. You speak to any of the SAS guys, they'll tell you that. Any of your Royal Marines that have operated in Afghanistan, Iraq, they'll tell you that. They witnessed that. They had to deal with that. Same with the U.S. Forces, same with any of the other NATO forces. When they had to fight these terrorists, that's what they did. The difference is that Hamas are more willing to use their own people of their own tribe as human shields than those other terrorists. Those other terrorists, they will go into Afghanis into an Afghani village, but they're not the same tribe. So in other words, your care for their human life and collateral is way less, if that makes sense, in the Arab world, right? Even though Afghanistan's not technically Arab, but the point is, in my region, it's the same, because the Afghanis have the same kind of tribal community, tribal mindset. And so within their tribe, they're willing to allow people within their own tribe to be killed as collateral, making the IDF look bad because these people got killed, because they forced them into the areas that they fired out of or whatever, and they work very hard to make sure that the IDF doesn't know that there's civilians there, if you like civilians, yeah? Because what I've learned in Gaza, there are practically no real civilians, meaning there's almost no one that I've ever seen out of all the buildings I've been to and all of the areas I've been where they don't support Hamas. Every home, pro-Hamas, pro-Qassam Brigade, whatever. Like all these terror groups, one of those symbols is in the house. T-shirts, mugs, you name it. In military terms, technically, in war reality, they're a target as well, if you want to be. Like they're open, but the IDF differentiates even so.
How do you compete when you're fighting against people that believe that life begins when they die?
Yeah.
It's kind of a win-win for them. I die, I win, I don't, I win until I die and then win again. That is a very dangerous, almost like an unbeatable ideology. Let me go back to
you're right.
And that's what frightens me. That's where I don't think people realise the magnitude of the mindset, the indoctrination from birth. Because I know Iran, for example, you know, these Islamist countries, they're born and taught and indoctrinated to hate the West from school, from primary schools. Yeah. They've got hate running through their veins because it's planted into their subconscious brain through literature. That's
also what we witnessed. That's what I'm telling you. It wasn't just that they had the symbols, it was in the school curriculum. I saw it. And it was like, are these people sick? They're teaching math on how to kill Jews. They're teaching geography how to kill Jews. They're teaching history on how to kill Jews. Like every aspect of learning, it incorporated in there how to demonize and hate Jews and make them subhuman as well, right? So it's like what the Nazis did, but it's worse, because it's mixed in with a jihadist agenda, so it's religious infused, and it's like you said, and like these people, the win-win is I die, I win. If I kill more of them, I win as well. To them, fatality is a win.
But to them, they can't lose. That's worrying.
They can't lose.
How many hostages are left captured as we speak today?
We're looking at just around 50.
Are you confident they'll be rescued or released?
I'll put it like this. In our last missions, we conducted some very high risk, very secret missions is all I can really divulge. But the fruit of that gave us 7 hostages back. We don't really talk about it, but so my unit alone was able to, through the missions that we did and conduct, clandestine style, whatever you want to call it, the fruit of it led to 7 bodies returned. We didn't get live ones. During the same time we were conducting those missions, there was another unit paralleling with us that was on the brink of releasing a live hostage. And unfortunately, that mission got scrapped because of some mistakes that were done, is pretty much all I can say. So we lost an opportunity on a live hostage, but thankfully, with a lot of hard work in the past, in this last deployment, we were able to, the fruit of that was that we were able to retrieve at least 7 bodies to get to the families that now are able to have closure, right? So we've passed the 660-day mark, nearly 2 years. That's a lot of time to be starving. Okay, so
and all the hostages
you
civilians?
Want to know how they're starving? Oh, of course. Some soldiers, excuse me, some soldiers.
But mostly civilians.
But mostly civilians, yes, sir. Because to be fair, some of the hostages that were taken were also soldiers, of course. So fair game there, you know. That's war.
That's chilling.
But it's different. You know, here I can go, okay, but when you take civilians out of their bed, out of their house, you're a real scumbag. But you take me out of my guard post or out of my Humvee, it's fair enough. You know what I'm saying? I'm here to defend my country, right? It's war. But they don't, it's asymmetric warfare. They don't play nice. They don't play a gentleman's war game here. They go for civilians, they go for children, they go for women, they go for old ladies, they go for everybody. Because they know how compassionate Israelis are. They know how it's going to hurt us. And they also know how it's going to hurt us more when the world demonizes us in addition to all this and say, we're bad. So no matter what, right, they're going to find an angle that's just going to make that wound even more hurtful. But in any case, coming near to 2 years of just pure starvation, that's danger close for those people to die. They get like a fig a day. Have you eaten a fig a day in your life? I haven't. I fasted before, full fast.
I have.
Okay.
So I weren't too sure how to answer that question.
Yeah. But I'm saying
choice, not punishment.
Exactly. But continuously.
Yeah. No, it's not good.
For 2 years.
Well, you start actually tripping out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Rapid eye movement kicks in. The walls breathe. Paranoia. It's mental torture.
Lack of oxygen. Yeah.
Lack of sleep.
Because you're aching, you're hurting, everything hurts, everything's in pain, and you're in just pure starvation the whole time. Here's a date. Here's half a pita. And what was it, like 100 ml of water a day in the good days? That's pure torture, you know? Like if you read stories of World War II and like the SAS guys and the missions they were conducting in the desert there against the southern advancement of the Nazis and all that. Those guys, when I read about what they're doing, they had a hard time getting supplies. They had to battle the harsh conditions and so on. And you read about how they had like body sores and all this kind of stuff. That sucks. That's painful. This is a whole other level.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is kind of the worst stuff I've ever heard, because I've interviewed an Israeli lady who was a tour guide, 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. Made me cry interviewing her. She leant over and held my hand, told me it was going to be okay.
Right.
She watched her friend get murdered in front of her, and then they attempted to kill her, and she played dead to survive. Yeah. And it was 2 Hamas guys that could speak Hebrew, that were dressed Israeli, and then they just attacked these 2 innocent women, killed one of them, left the other one for dead. So just all the stories I hear, the level of evil, they're very disturbing. Talk to me very briefly about the terror tunnels. And what I mean is the size of the land compared to the size of the tunnels.
Yeah.
When you sort of, add up the square footage or the mileage?
Yeah.
Because that was astonishing to find out.
So,
and why are they there? Why has all that money been spent on tunnels rather than new buildings and infrastructure?
It's exactly
why build down rather than up?
That's the $1 million question, right? Unless you wanted to create this doomsday scenario that you have right now, right? So Gaza's 42 kilometers long. And I'm glad I don't have to do the miles because even though the American accent, I grew up in Israel, so metric system, I know. And it's about 6 to 12 kilometers wide, okay? In that space, you have over 600 kilometers of terror tunnels. Let that sink in.
See, that is frightening, because to say that has to be premeditated for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Because you don't just build that overnight.
Correct. And so the longest tunnels are about 10 kilometers, give or take. Yeah. So just to give people an idea, it's not like big spaghetti. So it's terror tunnel, 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 terror tunnel. And so some are connected, a lot are not. And so really what the IDF has been dealing with, and people are like, why is it taking so long? Go ahead, clear the tunnels, please.
There's an underground maze.
Yeah, go ahead, show me. And it's connected to the upper ground, right? Because the terror tunnel comes out where there's a building, like I said. You know, why is there terrace under the bed of a girl's bedroom? Well, because it's a terror tunnel entry point. It's a shaft that leads down into the terror tunnel, and the opening happens to come out in the girl's bedroom because they want to disguise it there. And so a lot of people are saying, well, Gaza just looks like one big destruction, like there's nothing left. No, that's the areas where we've been fighting and clearing out where the terrorists are. But it's because of the terror tunnels that are connected to the above ground. So when I blow up that 10-kilometer terror tunnel, it blows upward and destroys everything that's above as well, because it's all under the homes.
And were those terror tunnels funded by foreign aid?
Yeah, funded by USAID, funded by the European Union, funded by Qatar, funded by Iran. So terrorist groups and European, Western, American, British, you know, all of these efforts to help the Gazans.
Because they weren't to know that the money was going to be spent on terror tunnels.
Well, that's the thing, is that the way the aid was given, there wasn't accountability of show me the receipts.
Right.
And so everybody's been guilty of it, including Israel. And this is where also people say, see, Israel wanted this. Israel funded because Israel gave Qatar money to give to Gaza. Okay?
I see.
And trying to blame Netanyahu for this. No, he's joining all of everybody. See, that's the thing. When you do it, you're not a criminal. When I do what you just did, I'm a criminal. It's a double standard. It's ridiculous. Where's common sense anymore? So if the President of the United States does it, or the British Prime Minister writes a check, and by the way, you guys write bigger checks. First of all, let's start with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you do more support for terrorists, but when Israel does it, we're bad. No, he's just joining in with the crowd and doing the politically correct thing of, okay, Israel will also fund humanitarian aid. But because we're forced to put it through these channels that are okayed by everybody, by all the international community, which are all these front groups like we mentioned earlier with humanitarian sites that I saw in Norway and whatever, where they're trying to raise funds. Well, there's also the ones that are operating in Gaza and have been for years. They are all front groups by these terrorists. And so the terrorists get the funding and they redirect it to terror tunnels, to weapons, and you name it. And that's the sad reality. Creating rockets, tens of thousands of rockets that they fire into Israel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, the entire reality is very sad.
Yeah.
How would you describe Netanyahu as a man? A psychopath, freedom fighter, or a hero?
Well,
these are the things that he's been called publicly.
Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as calling him a hero personally. I have a lot of respect for him, mainly his military career. He did do his service in an honorable way. He was in the Tier 1 unit of Matkal. His brother was one of the casualties from the the famous Entebbe hostage rescue raid, and so on. So that's his background. That's where he comes from, and I can't, not me or any Israeli can take that away from him, right? Irregardless of political moves that he does today, decisions and whatnot. What I will say is, out of all of the leadership in Israel right now, there is nobody in Israel that I can think of. And I'm telling you, and I'm openly going to tell you, I did not vote for Netanyahu in the last elections. Let's start with that. I'm putting that on the table before I say what, as I'm premising this. There's no one in Israel, in my opinion, that could have led Israel through this hard time in such an efficient way as Netanyahu.
So is Netanyahu guilty of war crimes?
No, of course not. The fact I'm sitting here in front of you is a pure miracle. And so is most of the Israelis living in Israel today. We had the largest ballistic rocket attack fired at us in the history of modern warfare from Iran a few months ago. The Houthis keep firing ballistic rockets at us. Lebanon, front. Syria, last front that just opened up. Gaza. These are multi-fronts. England, United States, Russia, you name it. Nobody has ever had to fight a war like this like Israel has. Show me a country that has ever been through a multi-front war and has successfully destroyed most of the terrorist groups. We have completely destroyed most of Hezbollah, and they have been silent on the northern border for months now. I'm telling you, as a soldier that fought in Lebanon, and on that deployment, in my third deployment when I fought in Lebanon with my unit, we were driving through ghost towns because of how the reign of terror from Hezbollah was in the north. And Israelis were, was it over 1 million were displaced Israelis that were living in hotels all throughout Israel, miserably. One of them was like a father to me and ended up actually dying from the conditions eventually. And it was, to me, one of the biggest, blows that we've taken as a family, as a personal family member that essentially, in effect, from the conditions, ended up dying.
Sorry to hear that. Because
of, his old age and so on. But thank you. But this is just my story out of tens of thousands of Israeli stories, multiplied. We have all lived through these miserable realities. And right now, all of the northern inhabitants are able to come back home. Peace and quiet. That's what Israel has been able to achieve miraculously. And I say miraculously because it's not because we're a great military. It's not because we're better than everyone else. In my opinion, we have a very big God. And we have witnessed miracle after miracle after miracle. In fact, that ballistic attack that I told you about, statistically, from a rocket expert that shared this on the Israeli media, he said statistically it was impossible what took place on that day. That the over 90% of the Iron Dome and all the other systems were able to take out all of those ballistic missiles and drones, suicide drones, and so on and so on.
You think that was divine intervention?
In my opinion, yes. 100%. Because I'm telling you, mathematically, according to a mathematic expert, he says it's impossible. So when something's impossible, right, like the splitting of the Red Sea, that's a supernatural miracle that you say that's amazing. Well, you know what else is a miracle? October 7th. There were 30,000 combatants from Hezbollah that were going to cross over in special Radwan units that were going to also, in conjunction with Hamas, attack from the north. We would have had thousands of Israeli hostages had they joined in.
Oh, wow. So October the 7th could have been even worse.
10 times
Tenfold.
worse. Tenfold.
Here's something.
And what I'm telling you is not conspiracy. We know this. But nobody knows why Nasrallah didn't join in. Nobody knows why all of these guys didn't all join in.
Do you know?
It's a miracle, is all I know.
That's it.
Because there isn't another answer.
Right.
God had our back, big time. And that's hard to say because for a lot of us, we're questioning God.
I think to make sense of what's going on over there, you've kind of got to lean into faith.
In my opinion.
You have to.
In my opinion, or else you're going to lose your mind.
I interviewed an imam not so long ago, and I was talking about Islamic terrorists, and he had no problem denouncing ISIS, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, But when I asked him, Hamas, a terrorist organization, he couldn't confidently, well, in fact, he didn't say they were terrorists. He sort of skirted around it as if to say it's not as easy as that. Is it as easy as that? Are Hamas terrorists?
Oh, yeah. Hamas is ISIS.
What? Yeah. Why would he not be too sure? Is it because there's the political element? But it's all political, surely.
Yeah, I don't know this, Imam, so I can't say.
Why would anybody suggest that Hamas aren't terrorists?
But why anybody? Exactly, that's the question you need to ask. I mean, because I'm not going to question him. I don't know him or his motive or whatever. But to say that Hamas is not like those other guys, first of all, they're funded by Iran, just like all these other terrorists are. They're trained in Iran. And not just that, also in Afghanistan, in the bases that were abandoned by the U.S. military, and this we know from Sarah Adams and Scott Mann and all these guys that went on to the Sean Ryan show and shared these things, right? And so they're sharing about how these terrorist groups are being funded, being equipped, being utilized and mobilized, both against Israel. Mainly because we're at the front line, but also, as you were mentioning earlier here, the concern about Europe. And yes, into Europe. And yes, into the United States. And yes, their goal is to conduct a full-scale October 7th-like attack, because the whole point as well is to outdo your last attack. So whatever they did on 9/11, you have to one-up it. You have to, in their mind. You have to share a point to the West. We have your attention now? Good. There's more coming. And they want us to live in fear and in terror. And just like the bombing that happened here in England on 7/7 as well. So they're going to want to up that one. You know, the bus bombing. I forget, excuse me for the British audience here, but I remember the date. I don't remember all the details. I just know it was a horrible attack on one of your double-decker buses and
the underground.
And the underground.
The underground, then the buses.
Right.
Yeah, horrendous.
So imagine that, up one, up, and they're going to keep doing that.
Well, that's my main concern. And just an honest response. Do the UK need to be scared?
You don't need to be scared.
Prepared.
You need to be prepared. You need to be aware. You need to be learned. You need to get educated on this. And it's not that you're not. You are. But it's politicians that suppress it, that suppress the truth. I don't know this for sure with England. I know this for sure with Sweden. And I know this for sure with Norway from my contacts there. So there are people that are in the 𝐶EPO in Sweden, for example, who have operated in North Africa, dealt with Islamic extremists for many years on behalf of Norway. 𝐶EPO is the equivalent of CIA or NSA for Sweden. And when I asked them, I said, and this was during the civil war in Syria, and when tens of thousands of European passport holders, Muslims, were going to go fight with ISIS. I said, and coming back home afterwards, after slaughtering people and all this stuff, I said, aren't you concerned about what's going on over there, and how these guys are going to come back after they're done, you know, getting their bloodthirst, getting a taste for that over there? He said to me, he said, Doron, he says, I am very concerned. I'm aware of it. And he says, more than that, he says, we know who they are. We know who's gone and who's come back. He says, but the politicians won't let us touch them.
This is what the scary part is.
You follow?
I know people in the UK, I've spoke to people in the UK that are currently building safe rooms in their houses, because I'm not the only one that thinks an October 7th style attack will hit the UK one day. And with the influx of migrants, it could happen any time. What would you say, with your security military background? Two things. What would you recommend to the British public in preparation for something like this? Because you have to be at least prepared, ready, and open to suggestion that it may well happen. Because you don't want to dig a well when you're thirsty. Yeah. If it's coming, you want to be prepared. So how would you recommend that people prepare individually and also prepare as a community?
Yeah, I've been working with Project Pineapple guys, Scott Mann, Sarah Adams, and all these different experts. We're trying to help do preparedness for America, for what's coming.
And the same rules will apply for the UK.
And the same, exactly. And so each one of us has our expertise. I'm not an Intel guy, so I can't tell you. I just work off of the Intel from the Intel geeks, if you like, and use that and utilize that for what I'm good at. And so what I would say, the first thing, and this is the most important one, get a hold of God. Number one. Number one. If you think that you're going to survive the storm that's coming in your own strength, in your humanistic ideals, you're going to fail, my opinion. Because without God, you're not going to be able to withstand what's coming. This is a war against God, first and foremost. Look at the pattern. The green-red alliance is all about taking God out of our culture, out of our country, out of everything. And I tell this to the Scandinavians.
I see what you mean.
You have the cross in your flags.
Union Jack.
Yeah, or the Union Jack. And the foundations are Judeo-Christian, first of all. That's what's being attacked. So love it, hate it, whatever, I don't care. You have to deal with this seriously. God's no joke. And the enemy that's being used right now is Islamic jihadists to come after your faith or your lack thereof and to destroy you. If you don't have a faith, you will not survive, in my opinion. So that's number one. Make God great again in our culture. Not America great, not Great Britain great. Make God great in my culture.
You'll get a lot of claps in the comments for saying that.
So that's what I'm, first of all, trying to encourage people to do. You have to magnify God in your culture, in your family. Because when God's great in your culture, you can, and this has happened, revivals that have happened in the UK in years past, the Hebraic revivals in Wales, you name it, these are what saved Europe many times over.
Faith.
Faith, because the decline of humanity here and everything, because that's our culture, or our nature, is to want to go and sin, right? And then it was amazing people that stood up and said, no, God. And then revivals broke out and your culture was saved. So to me, that's what you need, first and foremost, because it's a supernatural battle. We're not talking about flesh and blood here. We're not talking about, there's nothing you can do physically if you like. But if you have that squared away, then what you can do physically is you can prepare your family, start with that, and to have an awareness. You have to, as a family, be aware of the threats and don't be lax with, sending your children, or especially your daughters, dressed in a way that would create a provocation, create an attack, create a threat to them. Well, I can't tell them how to dress it. Well, then, again, you need to be aware of the predators that are out there and what they're looking for, right? So you have to prepare your family, your close family, your children to have a mindset of how I dress, where I go can make me a target, right? If I go to a place where I become vulnerable, but if you're always where you have, you have males around that can help you, brothers, fathers, uncles, whatever, yeah, that can always have your back, then that's going to make you strong. I don't send my daughter, for example, just anywhere all the time, unsupervised, if you like, unaccompanied.
What a sad sign of the times that is.
Well, because I'm aware of predators out there.
Oh, I know, yes. I'm just saying, but it's a sad sign of the times that we have to do that.
But a lot of us don't think or want to put effort in that because it talks about, that means time. It means sacrifice for me, for someone else. The easiest thing is, well, my daughter's old enough. Just go over there and just go do this and just, I'm not saying you have to guard your kid like a whatever. It depends on your community. You know your community better than I do.
Enhance your responsibility.
Enhance your responsibility. It's that simple. And just think about the ramifications of something that would be mundane as just go to go with your friends to a party. Party where? You have to ask the question, where? What could be a threat? You have to think of that.
Constant due diligence.
Women, go shopping. Don't be on your phone and your car keys and your groceries as you're going to your car. Have situational awareness. Is there a van parked next to my car? Is my car parked in a way where I'm blocked from the vantage point of other pedestrians that could see a potential attempted attack against me? Because people think that all sexual assaults are because the woman was dressed immodestly. That's not true. When you ask most sex offenders how they pick their target, it's actually a woman that was vulnerable, wasn't aware of her surroundings, and they could grab onto her. She had clothing that was easy to grab and take her and control.
Okay.
So it's also contrary to what a lot of us might be thinking, right? It's not the one wearing yoga pants, okay, per se. Because a woman in yoga pants, especially if she's fit, the predator is going to say, no, thank you. You're going to probably get a fight here. She works out. Try to grab her, slips out of my hand because she doesn't have anything to grab onto, clothing-wise, yeah? So it's contrary to some of what we might think in kind of a way of thinking. And then in general, try to get self-defense training. Try BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's a great sport. It's a family sport that you can do as a family, and it teaches you how to defend yourself in a way that's also legal, by the way. Okay? It's not like 𝐃𝐨𝐽 where it's very aggressive and it's breaking all the rules. Although 𝐃𝐨𝐽 is also a good one to have. But that's also hard to recommend because there's a lot of fake stuff out there that ride on the name. So some type of sport self-defense, because if you're fat and lazy and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not eating right and you're not mentally prepared, you're not physically prepared, you're going to become weak and you're going to be soft. You're going to be an easy target. So think of how to incorporate and change your lifestyle, right? Smoking, drinking, all this stuff excessively, not a good idea.
Let me take advantage of the time that I've got with you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just, there's so much stuff that I think is important to discuss and certainly to learn. Because you're the first and probably only person in a long, long time I'm ever going to speak to that's actually got lived experience. So I want to talk about some of the celebrities that are endorsing Palestine, denouncing Israel, the likes of Dan Bilzerian, for example. But before I do ask that, briefly, what is the history of the conflict? Because both sides blame each other for the historical trigger.
Yeah.
What's the history of it?
The short version is British colonialism. Okay, if you like. It's not just British. It was France. It was Russia. All the countries post-World War I created most of the countries in the Middle East that were not existent beforehand. Beforehand, we had tribes and tribal rule and control and etc. And it was either Islamic or Christian or Jewish. The mainstream religious groups or Druze, minorities, etc.
What are Druze?
Druze,
sorry, forgive my ignorance.
No, yeah. Druze is a religious sect within the Arab world. They believe that they are derived, or their traditions and everything derived from Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. And some will say, like more historically speaking, they're actually an offshoot of Islam that broke away from Islam. And that is why they are targets of Islam, because they left the mainstream. They left the fold.
They betrayed.
They betrayed, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ultimate kufr. And therefore in Islam...
Like a group of apostates.
Of apostates, and therefore in Islam, they actually have a curse word that is special to them more than they call you and me an infidel. Right. So there's another term that they use for the Druze in specific. So there's a special hatred towards the Druze. And that's why the Druze, in Israel at least, and the same in most parts of the world where they live in northern Israel and in the mountains. And the reason why they migrated to those areas is so they could be best defensive against Islamic attacks. So live up in rural areas, very mountainous, and best able to defend against Islamic attacks and trying to convert them to Islam. And so Druze are great people, by the way. They're some of the best citizens of the state of Israel. They're like the salt of the earth, in my opinion.
I'm glad I asked, because I had no idea at all.
And that's why I'm very connected to what's happening in Syria in the targeted attacks against the Druze and the Christian minorities there.
Let's finish the history and then we'll go to that.
Exactly. And so essentially what happened is, like I said, post-World War I, 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭, and all these different rulings of who splits what, et cetera, et cetera. Great Britain had what is known as the Mandate of Palestine, which is all of modern Jordan and all of Israel, if you also include West Bank, which is Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. all of that landmass was what was known as the British Mandate of Palestine. In 1922, it was officiated in San Remo, Italy, after they first convened in 1920. The League of Nations from World War I convened, and they listened to the Jewish community, the Muslim community, and everyone who came to represent the cause of why this land should be ours for our people group. And the League of Nations decided and officiated finally in 1922 in San Remo that all of the British Mandate of Palestine will be the Jewish state for the Jews to come back, because they're the indigenous people to this land originally and have been for centuries living there. They didn't come in afterwards. There were Jewish communities continuously living there since the Roman exile all the way back in the Second Temple period, like 2,000 years ago. So for 2,000 years, you've had Jewish community continuously living there. You had Christians that arose when Christianity became the empire's faith, and it spread throughout the region. So you had Christendom that came up. Then you had Islam that was created and came up. And then you had the wars between all them. And Jews throughout all of that continuously lived there and survived all these empires and all these religious wars, etc. But it all led up to it all led up to San Remo, 1922. That was when it was officiated that this will be the Jewish home of the Jewish people. Then the British went back on their original agreement, and they cut off Jordan because they felt that they needed the Hashemite kingdom to help them to fight in World War I. And so they divvied off that part of their mandate and said, this can be your landmass, and you can control this area, and it's yours. And it became modern-day Jordan. So that's why you have a minority that is controlling a majority people group in Jordan, and that the British created, unfortunately, through their agreement with the Hashemite kingdom, or the Hashemite tribe, which became the kingdom of Jordan. Then Israel was left with whatever was left post all of these wars in World War II, and lots of kickbacks. And then the United Nations came in, and meaning backtrailing, going back on what was international law. So this is accepted by international law, because people keep talking about international law, 67 borders. What are you talking about? That's a post-war reality with a demarcation line. What are you talking about? That's not international law and land and who gets what. 1922, San Remo, that's law. The British, the U.S., and all of who's who in the United Nations all went back on international law and forced a deal between the Arabs that said, no, we do not accept a Jewish state within what was left of the mandate. And then so the United Nations tried to make the partition plan, as we know. And that's what everybody talks about, is the partition plan. But it's the United Nations. It's not international law. They cannot tell what nations what to do. They can recommend and try to solve conflicts. They don't create law. And so that's essentially what led to the state of Israel. Again, it's through a war that broke out in 48 when the Arabs said no, Israel said yes, we accept whatever is left of what you guys agreed, and cut off and cut off and cut off. And then we won that war miraculously because they were greater in numbers. They were well equipped and everything. And then what happened is Jordan took over the West Bank, and it's called the West Bank because it's the West Bank of the Jordan River, not because it's a geographic place historically. And then we gave away Gaza at some point to the Gazans and said, fine, we'll give this up. So Israel kept making compromises after all these wars and giving away land and discussing giving away and giving away. But in reality, Israel has a full right to all the land of Israel, and technically also to Jordan if you want to play that game. If you want to play that game, Jordan belongs to Israel as well. Yeah? But that's just the history and that's the background. But everything in between is just politics that is fueled through propaganda behind the Palestinian movement, which is all fictitious and lies because, first of all, there isn't a Palestinian people. They're Arabs. Then they come from Jordan. They come from Egypt. They come from Iraq. They come from all of the surrounding neighboring Arab countries. They're not indigenous to the land. Some are indigenous, just like there were Jews that were indigenous there for centuries. And the bottom line is there are no Palestinian people. They're called that because that's what the Russians pushed as a propaganda deception tool for Yasser Arafat. So in 1964, he says, I, man of a vision, I'm going to give the Palestinians a cause, which is Palestine and Palestinian. Up until Yasser Arafat coined that and made that a term, Palestinians, during the British Mandate, the Arabs rejected the term that I'm a Palestinian. But Israelis, Jews living in the British Mandate of Palestine, they said, yes, we're Jewish Palestinians. So it's ironic. It's the Arabs that said, no, I'm an Arab. I'm not a Palestinian. They rejected the term. And rightly so, because it's just a geographical name that was used in a mislabeling of not mislabeling, but usurpedly done by the Romans to erase Jewish history of the land. So in reality, when you're fighting for Palestine and a Palestinian state, you're fighting to erase Jewish history, is essentially what it is.
Okay, so in layman's terms, who drew first blood, Israel or Palestine?
In reality, it was the Arabs that if you like, that drew first blood because they were by the Arabs that were told when the Jews were going to get this land and the British are going to leave finally, and they said, we're done, dealing with the Arabs and the Jews and all this, who cares? We're leaving. So when that vacuum was created, all of the Arab world united to basically destroy the Jewish people. So if you like, who drew the first blood, it was essentially them. It was the Jews who accepted sharing the land originally in 48. So even when we declared statehood, we have always said we will share this with the Arabs that were here, both Christian Arabs, Muslim Arabs, Druze, Bedouins, and all other minorities that live here. And in fact, we're not going to change your status in any way. You continue your life as you were before, as if Israel wasn't here. Was kind of the utopic idea of the Jewish people. But it wasn't accepted by the Arabs. And so they chose war and not partitioning of any of the land and or agreeing on who gets what. Okay. And that's what led to continuous war up until today.
Okay. So for people listening that have got a completely different version of that, because that's all I just see literally people fighting against each other as to who started it, who's at fault. For anyone that believes another side of the story or theory or whatever it may be, and they're thinking, why isn't Liam challenging in Doron? It's because I don't know the history. This is well above my pay grade. I'm just learning as much as I can from a man that's lived there. So
for argument's sake, Israel started it. Okay? Argument's sake, devil's advocate, we started, because it really doesn't matter in my opinion. I'm just telling you what historically happened. Someone who's also studied to become a tour guide, so I know the history a little bit better than most. So what I can tell you is, even if we started it, I just gave you the legal basis why the Jewish people have a right to that geographical land.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover that just so that...
That's international law.
So I appear...
So I'm putting that out there as well.
Yeah, so I appear to be fair.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if we started, let's say we started it, right? Because we had Jewish groups that attacked the British, that attacked Arabs, and did horrible things. I'm not going to whitewash our history. We also have those people. So you can say, well, they started it. Maybe. Maybe it was the Stern Gang. Maybe it was the Lehi. Maybe it was the Nili. I'm not going to get into the whole web of who shot the first attack, whatever. The bottom line is, historically, who has the right to the land and who has been the aggressor and who's been the defender. The Arabs have been the aggressors who do not want Jews in the small sliver of land, when, by the way, the Arabs have 22 Arab Muslim states with huge land masses. And we're like a drop in the bucket in all of the Arab Muslim world. So my question is real simple then, therefore this. Why isn't it enough for them? That's the real question that can be asked. Why is all the Muslim Arab lands not enough for you?
It's also
why are you coming for Europe? Why are you coming for Canada and America?
Why are we allowing
Why
it?
South America? Why Russia, China, whatever? Everywhere where it's like it's never enough. It's never enough. That's the real question that needs to be asked.
This is a question I do ask, and I do think to myself, if Palestine was to take over Israel,
Sure.
if Hamas were to take over Israel,
Yeah.
do people believe that they'll be satisfied with that and stop there? What do you think?
I think a lot of people in the West believe that because they've fallen for the Western media propaganda, which is just ridiculous. If they take over, God forbid, if they take over, it's going to be a bloodbath for all minorities in the land of Israel, which will become now an Islamic caliphate and renewed caliphate, if you like, because really this is where Islam used to rule for many years. So the whole goal is to go back to this utopic Islamic golden era, so to speak, where we ruled all these lands, and we need to get it back, and we need to Islamize it all. So in a hypothetical world, let's say it's all that. What's going to happen? They're going to come for you. They're going to come for the rest of the world when they're done with us. And sadly, they're going to go for each other, because that's what we've seen in all of these civil wars, where do you know that over 90% of the wars in the world today, either one of the side or both sides are Muslim? Over 90%.
Mm.
So if they're not
I don't know this, by the way, but I'm sort
that's a statistic. So if you're going against...
I'm sort of nodding in disbelief, if I'm honest.
Yeah, but if I'm out of the picture, if the Jews are out of the picture and the Christians are out of the picture, they're going to kill each other. And that's a sad reality.
Mm.
Because the thing is, the fruit of jihadist Islam bears death and destruction, and that's the truth. And you ask any good Muslim that is honest about it, and they're going to say you're right. And I have a lot of good Muslim friends that will say that openly, and they will say that and they believe in a reformed Islam. So they don't believe in the jihadist version of their faith and of the Quran and what's in there, and they believe that it needs to be reformed. And so I'm not saying every Muslim you see is a bad guy. Let's be clear here. They're all human beings, just like you and me.
Mm.
Most Muslims in the world, God bless them, they want to put food on the table, a roof over their head, and provide for their family and go on with their life. They don't give a crap about jihad. But the sad reality is the small portion, the small minority within the Islamic world who are jihadists, they're the ones that create over 90% of the wars in the world today.
Frightening statistics.
Yeah.
So why do you think the likes of Dan Bilzerian is calling BS on your theory of the conflict? Is he run out of money? I don't think so.
Well, I'm sure he finds ways to replenish.
I can't work it out because he's gone so venomously against Israel and pro-Palestine, and he's obviously got pictures of him reading the Quran. It's like, he's clearly converting.
No, I don't think so.
Is that all bravado?
Yes, it is. It is.
Is he paid to do that? What's your theory?
He's from a minority Christian group that Israel supported one side of the two sides in that conflict. And so he's got like personal beef with Israel because Israel supported the Islamic country that essentially was attacking the Christian minority. Now, I forget the exact name of the group because I did research on him and I tried to answer the same question. I like to research all these people and see what's their angle. And I think their angle is profit because they've learned that the mainstream and what's going to get you the most likes, the most profit is to hate on Israel. And they've learned that post-October 7th. That's why he's not alone. You have Tucker Carlson, you have Candace Owens, and you have many other political commentators out there who all of a sudden turned on Israel. And these are Christians.
Mm.
Okay? I mean, she's Catholic, and Tucker, I think he's not Catholic. It's another denomination. By research of the denomination supports the Palestinian state, not Israel. So I go, okay, so it's either that, or, like I just said, it's all about the likes and clicks and what's going to get you the most money. Mm. But there's also others that have done some deep dive into this and proven that actually people like Tucker are funded by Qatar. Because there's other questions that you need to ask, not just the Israel hating, but why are you interviewing and wanting to promote people like Putin, and say that Russia isn't that bad. I don't know if your viewers might have seen that, but Tucker did a special. He went to Russia. He went and bought a equivalent to McDonald's and said, oh, it's much cheaper. And it's just like in a McDonald's, the same thing. And I'm just like, yeah, it's cheaper because that's communism. It's dirt cheap because people are going to get dirt cheap to work there. They can't build a future like you can in America. Huge difference, bro. What are you supporting? Communism? You trying to preach that? That's a great... Oh, went into one of their shops, you know, grocery stores. Look on the shelves, they're full, and it's such a wonderful, you know, it's not as bad as the West is painting it. I have a good friend who's a war correspondent. He said, I know that place that he went to, and they staged it.
Well, this is
you follow?
This is what we're seeing sort of world over, certainly West over. Far too many staged scenarios. We don't know what's real anymore, what to believe, who to believe. The truth doesn't matter anymore. If it sells, sell it. Truth seems to be irrelevant now. And I'm searching for it, because I think, well, I want to know, like I said, I want to know I'm on the right side of history. A few more things. Yeah. For the record, we have a lot of people in the UK. I mean, we've had this rapper at our annual music festival in Glastonbury singing "Death to the IDF," and then you've got people singing "From the River to the Sea." I think people are singing it mindless and aimlessly. So, for the record, "From the River to the Sea," when people chant that, what does that actually mean?
So, geographically, you're talking about from the border of Israel to Jordan, and they're talking about from the Jordan River, which is the geographical border between Israel, Jordan, and technically if you go up, you're talking also into Syria, and then of course Lebanon on the very north of Israel. So from this river and to the other side of that in between is the Mediterranean Sea. So that means all of Israel shall be Palestine, and Palestine will be free from Jews, is what it means. So the next time one of these folks, if you're listening and you want to chant that, think about it. Do you want to be a Nazi? Well, I know you're calling me a Nazi, which is ironic. My father fought in World War II. He fought Nazis. In fact, that was his greatest motivation as to why he went to war. He was 15 years old, lied about his age, because he heard Jews were being killed by Nazis. So he went to fight Nazis. So when you say the IDF is a Nazi army, you're an idiot. That is an oxymoron. And when you say that river to the sea, that's also idiotic, because you're saying Judenrein. You're sick.
And to be clear, so from what I can grasp from what you're saying, the chant "from the river to the sea" is actually calling for the genocide of Jews.
100%. Okay. Judenrein. So if people don't know what that means, it means free Jew-free zones, Jew-free areas. That's what the Nazis were trying to create in all of Europe and in all of Germany. Exterminate and get rid of the Jewish problem. And that's also what Dan Bilzerian and specifically Candace Owens are very demonically calling out for. And they're going on these libels and saying the Jews are making matzahs out of Christian blood. And she goes back to the Dark Ages and the Christians that were idiots in Europe, because most of them were ignorant, with all due respect. They weren't, to me, there's a huge difference between someone who grew up in a Christian nation, so-called, but never read a Bible. And they didn't know what the Bible had to say. And so they acted barbaric, really. So it wasn't in the name of Jesus. It wasn't in the name of the New Testament or the Bible, period. And so these Christians, that were ignorant, they carried out anti-Semitic attacks against Jews because they wanted to scapegoat someone for their problems. And they continuously and repeatedly did it on the Jewish people. And in many cases, but one specific case, there was a Christian boy that went missing. They found him not years later. They found him later. I don't know how long, but they found him later eventually. But the libel had already spread. They found him. He had fallen into a well. But the story spread because it was around Passover. The story was spread that they stole this young boy because they wanted children's blood to make matzahs. You know what's ironic? And this is Candace saying this, Candace Owens. She's spreading this libel that's from the Dark Ages and making it a revival of it in the modern times with her millions of viewers. And that's why a lot of these people will look at me right now and as they're listening to us and say, don't listen to what Doron is saying. He's a liar. He's a deceptor. He is of the synagogue of Satan. Well, you're also ignorant. You're showing your ignorance because you don't even know what the context of that term means, by the way. And I've corrected people on that all the time because I do happen to be savvy in the New Testament, by the way. Studied Christian theology many moons ago, and I've sat with some of the top Christian leaders on lots of verses in the Bible that are questionable, etc. But all that to say, this is very disturbing because it's causing people to look at Jews and hate on Jews, and like you pointed out, and you're scapegoating the actual racist and the actual people who are causing all the problems in the West and in our culture. And I think we both know exactly where that's coming from.
And they must be just, everyone's doing their work for them.
They are, exactly. They're so grateful. They're so grateful that the target's off of them and that it's on the Jews. It's always the Jews' problem. It's always the Jews' fault. And by the way, you want a real truth behind, you want a real scandal? There are demonic cults that are Satanists, that worship Satan, and they do kidnap children and use their blood for their cultic practices, okay? It's a satanic, demonic movement, underground, okay? Cloak and dagger, behind closed doors, whatever you want to call it, because that's how these secret societies are. And they are conducting their dirty, nasty business and molesting children, by the way, because it's part of their whole rituals. And they're not being called out. But the practices that they're doing, like Candace is declaring and saying and repeating, she's actually projecting the real demons onto the Jews and saying, that's what we're guilty of. And I'm going, right, you just gave those people a pass now. They can continue to hide in the shadows, okay? All these, what's his name?
P. Diddy.
P. Diddy and friends. All of these are part of these different cults. And it's the high-ups in society. And it's the Epstein files for those who care. Again, but it's the Jews. It's Mossad. No. The reason why those files aren't going to get opened is because you're going to open the Pandora box of all the dirtiest, nastiest people on planet Earth. There are pedophiles that are bloodthirsty of children's blood, psychopaths, and they're a part of demonic cults.
And do you know exactly who's part of this cult?
There's so many.
Any highbrow figures that we actually know of?
I don't want to give names, but let me just tell you that there's a reason why no one's gunning for them. You follow? There's a reason why nobody's gunning for them.
What is that reason?
They are untouchable, right. And they know it.
And if you go for them, they come for you tenfold. Is that
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you know what that is? I'm going to veer off from that.
So, in any case, you want real conspiracy? That's something to look into.
Yeah, I would love to get more into that, but I think we'll save that for another time. Just go back to the conflict before we wrap this up. And there's just a couple more things. Firstly, do you think there is a two-state solution?
Yeah. I think that there's the state of Israel and that there's the state of the Arab states.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's your two-state solution.
Simple. All the Arabs who believe in Islam and jihad and whatever, go join your Arab brothers and sisters. And by the way, you can say, well, this is racist or crazy or insane. No, it's not. If I ask you what's your family name, I can tell you where you come from in England and what tribe you belong to or whatever in my culture of the Middle East. If I ask the Palestinian where he comes from, because Palestinian is not a culture, it's not a people group, it's not a civilization that's ever lived. But I ask you, what's your family name? Okay, Khalabi. Okay, so you go to Syria. Got it. You're this. You go to that. Based on your family, it's which tribe you belong to, and where you geographically belong in the Middle East. So in reality, it's returning things to how they should be, because I don't believe there are too many Muslims that can live in the state of Israel peacefully. I think there are. And there needs to be some kind of vetting of some sort. And they're more than welcome to live in a Jewish state, and that they understand it's a Jewish state, just like the Druze. You want a perfect example? It's the Druze. They pledge allegiance to the state of Israel, and they recognize, and you know what? They sing the national anthem. Do you know what the national anthem is? Nefesh Yehudi, da-na-na. A Jewish spirit is in the national anthem.
Right.
You're a Druze. You're talking about the Jewish spirit, talking about Jews returning to their land and what? Like, really? Like, how can I say these words?
They're all for it.
Yeah, because they believe in Jews are indigenous to Judea, which is the land of Israel, and therefore it is only right for them to live here. And that when we set things in its proper order, because they understand that that creates stability, that then we're going to have peace and we're going to have stability. But when we fight the natural order of things, that's when we get chaos. And they understand that very well. So if you ask the Middle East and Middle Easterners what real solutions are, that's going to be the answer. But very few people want to voice it, because we know that when you voice something like that, you put yourself in a box of, colonialist, anti-Muslim, or what have you. That's not the case. I'm just talking about history, geography, and who belongs where. And with all due respect, I've never seen any culture thrive, if it's meaning any nation thrive, with an external Islamic influence within it. It only creates friction because, with all due respect, we have different ideals and worldviews. And I respect that, but not in my land, not in my country. You want Sharia and you want to whop off heads and hands for stealing? Do that in Islamic lands. Go for it. I'm not going to forbid you, because it's not my business. It's not my culture. It's not my religion. It's just calling things what they are, black and white, and making order. If people want to continue chaos and say, well, there's a two-state solution and you have a Palestinian state within a Jewish state and all this, yeah, you mean like we have with Gaza, because that was a two-state solution. We gave away Gaza in 2005. I was there, and I pulled out with my men, and we bled for that land, and it hurt to give it away, knowing, and I was of the minority that said, we're going to get rockets and we're going to get terrorism because we don't have a military control in this area. And look what happened over 20 years later.
For a man that's lived right in the thick of all of this bloodthirsty violence, has it affected your mind?
It will affect you. There's no way for it not to affect you. Even people of faith, right? Like I said, having faith is a game changer.
Kept you balanced.
It gives you something to grasp, to get some kind of grounding, if you like, just like you have grounding electricity, it gives you that grounding, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop the interference of the electric flow like you have from seeing death, destruction, and all the horrors of what's happened. And so you have to work on that. A lot of my friends are dealing with PTS. I don't call it PTSD because it's not disorder. It's actually normal. It's normal for a normal human being to have symptoms of witnessing things that are terrible. That means you're normal. If you're a psychopath and you witnessed horrors of war and whatever, and you took pleasure in it, you're a cuckoo. You're a psychopath, right? You're like Ted Bundy and Friends.
Yeah.
So those are the not normal people. So it's actually normal, right, to have reactions, to have side effects of that. So lack of sleep, not being able to sleep, appetites, and paranoia in some cases. Yeah, I mean, I don't struggle with all these, but these are just some of the side effects of war, and the post-traumatic symptoms that you get. And so I'm doing actually a program with a gentleman that it's a special program where he basically coaches you and sits with you and goes through the traumas that you experience, and you go through bit by bit. And what he's doing is he's reprogramming the brain and helping the brain process the trauma. Because what happens is the brain makes things up.
Right.
It starts filling things up and making things that weren't there because it didn't process the trauma properly of what happened. So you could say that in this gun battle or whatever, this and this and this happened. People are like, what are you talking about? That didn't happen. That never happened. We read the protocol and we know what happened. That definitely didn't happen. And you're like, oh, I remember that. And so you start to also, like there was a woman, I'll give you an example, a good example, a better example, was this woman in Israel that claimed that she was a hostage or that she was raped by these terrorists, that she was raped and all this horrible stuff happened to her, and she was one of the victims from October 7th. What happened was, from the trauma of what she had witnessed and experienced, she started to see herself as one of the victims. Her brain, in other words, played tricks on her because she really believed this stuff. And it took a process to get her to get back to reality and be like, sweetheart, you weren't raped. You weren't any of those victims. You were actually spared. So let's get you back to reality, you know.
That's heavy.
And so that's just people that nothing happened to them. Yeah.
Let alone
actual
victims.
Actual victims, seeing the Nova horrors. The first week of the war, on the very first week of the war, we were green-lighted to carry out body retrieval missions in the battlefields, which were actually in our on our side of the border, which were still hostile, from mortars, from snipers, from you name it. So in the cloak of darkness, it was actually a moonless night. It was kind of ideal for our missions. So we're all with a night. Well, I didn't get night vision, but those who did, you're conducting this mission, and we're pinpointing these areas and collecting those bodies out of the battlefield. And so just the smell of the death, right, of rotting flesh, you know, that gets embedded in you. And this is us as the security team. We didn't have to touch the bodies. We didn't have to collect them. We were just in the convoy heading back, and the truck in front of us that had all the bodies in it, all of that is hitting you. And of course, you see the bodies that are maimed and just, you know, just from the carnage of what took place on October 7th. And then the night following, we collected another like 14 bodies or something. But just those kind of things like that. It wasn't we were under threat. We were, you know, like we had in Lebanon. We almost got killed there. We almost got killed a lot of times. But that right there, like you said, it'll make you maybe paranoia. It'll make you, you know, angry. It make a lot of effects. And so this gentleman is working with me, for example, and we're going through every one of those things. And it's not just the war, but it's everything in your life. So he's helping what you didn't process properly when you were younger as well and had traumas and things, and just kind of rewiring the system. And then there's a plenty other of trauma therapies that you can do. Ride horses, go to nature, go to the beach. There's plenty of different therapies that you can do. And it's important because we're losing people that are taking their lives. Marriages are breaking up.
Family unit,
you know, so it's taking its toll in this war.
And it's very hard to end an interview like this on a positive note because there's no great deal of positivity in it, and it's still going on. But before I ask my final question, where can my audience come and find you to continue following your journey? What platforms are you on?
The easiest, if you want to get to all my platforms.
And we'll put the links in the description. Is
you just go to DoronKeidar.com. That's my name. So DoronKeidar.com. And in there you'll have links to my YouTube, my Instagram, Facebook, the movie that I'm working on. So everything's kind of on a landing page.
Oh, perfect.
And then people can get in whatever they're interested in. You can follow, book speaking engagements and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, before I ask you the final question, we will put Doron's website link in the description. And I'll ask you now at this stage, because we're so far into it, please like and subscribe to the channel, because the bigger the channel, the better the guest. And we can keep having conversations like this. We can keep digging for the truth that is so desperately being suppressed from us. And why, we'll never know unless we have conversations like this. And then the final question that I would ask you, Doron, after thanking you for flying in, taking the time and detailing what you have done. It must be very hard to relive over and over again. But in the UK, since October the 7th, every single week we've had pro-Palestinian marches in the capital of our country. We're talking thousands of them. Some even waving Hamas flags. I wonder if half of them know that that's a terrorist flag they're waving. What would your message to those people in Britain be that are protesting every single week for Hamas?
I'd say the simple message to them is, why are you not protesting for the starving, tortured hostages in Gaza? Don't support me for fighting in this war. I get it. I don't need that. You know, I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it for your likes or dislikes. I'm doing it to defend my family, to defend my country. You don't have to support Prime Minister Netanyahu or anybody in our government. You don't have to support us. We could be a terrible country, terrible nation, horrible. But there are innocent people that are held hostage now for over 670 days and climbing. It's just every day that goes by, there are people that are starving that maybe get a day to live off of. At best, they'll get 100 mils of liquid to drink, possibly drinking water or recycled urine or salt water. Half a pita is a luxury for these folks. And they have been held in this condition for nearly 2 years. If you're going to protest to free the Palestinians and for what they're going through and their hardship, because I'm not going to tell you that they're not having a hard time. Of course they are. They're in the middle of a battlefield because of Hamas, putting them square in the middle of that. So if you're waving flags for Hamas, you're waving flags for the people that are starving the Gazans and the hostages.
And maybe, just maybe, they've got it wrong. I always keep some space in my mind for doubt in case I've got it wrong.
Same here. I mean, this is my reality as I know it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just trying to tell my reality as honestly and as best as I can. Could I be wrong? Sure. Of course I could be wrong. But I highly doubt it because I've seen evil and what real evil is. Mm. And if you guys don't understand that this is pure and real evil, that's a problem. And you have to identify pure and real evil. We're not pure and real evil. We're fathers, we're mothers, we're sisters, we're brothers. They're just trying to defend our land and our people. And it's as simple as that.
Doron, it's been mind-boggling, eye-opening, and tremendously sad, but I'm very grateful that you've joined me and shared that with me and my audience. And I pray for peace, and I sincerely hope that you stay safe. Good health.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you, mate.
it.
Cheers, brother.